I, Tanushree Banerjee, faculty member, School of Petroleum Management, PDEU, on behalf of PDEU, have great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Dinesh Paliwal, partner at KKR, a leading global investment firm that manages multiple alternative asset classes, including private equity, credit, and real assets. He is the chief guest and distinguished speaker for today. Welcome you, sir. I also welcome from PDEU family, Professor S. Sundar Manoharan, DG PDEU, Professor Tarun Shah, Registrar PDEU, Professor Pramod Paliwal, Director School of Petroleum Management, all PDEU school directors and faculty deans, PDEU faculty members, PDEU officials, dear students and guests to the 2021 edition of Pandit Deendayal Memorial Lecture Series. This day marks the birthday of Shri Deendayal Upadhyay. I shall now invite Dr. Pramod Paliwal, Director School of Petroleum Management, PDEU, to provide an introduction to the Memorial Lecture Series, Life and Times of Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay.
Thank you, Dr. Tanushree. A very warm good evening from India to Mr. Dinesh Paliwal, Professor S. Sundar Manoharan, Professor Tarun Shah, Professor Khanna from School of Technology, Professor Vij, my colleagues at PDU, students, guests. We, in 2010, decided to honor the founder name of our university, Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay, and started a lecture series in his memory. We are in the 21 edition of this lecture series. Over the years, the Pandit Deendayal Memorial Lecture Series has witnessed distinguished speakers from all walks of life who have shared their thoughts on a variety of subjects. We are very glad to have Mr. Dinesh Paliwal for this year's memorial lecture. Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay, who was born in year 1916 in a very small village called Chandrabhan Nagla in Mathura district of Uttar Pradesh, came from a very, very humble background. During his lifespan of 52 years, he accomplished many firsts in public and political and social life of this country. One of the greatest contributions of Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay has been his concept of integral humanism. Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay swam against the wave during his times. He was the founder of a political movement called Jansangh during the days when the country was more or less politically monochromatic. Our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi is one of the illustrious disciples of Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay. Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay's integral humanism and his thoughts on economics, thoughts on politics, thoughts on the way Indians should play their role in development of the nation are, though very much unique, but are also in consonance with another luminary, Mahatma Gandhi, father of the nation. And there are some areas and very crucial areas where both their thoughts actually also converge. It's a pleasure year after year to remember Panditji, and we look forward to yet another engrossing and thought-provoking session by our distinguished speaker today. Over to you, Dr. Tanushree.
Thank you, Professor Paliwal. Let me introduce the chief guest and distinguished speaker for today, Mr. Dinesh Paliwal. He is Global Partner, KKR, Merelli Chair and Lead Director, Board Member, Nestle, Raytheon Technologies and Miami University, Retired Chairman and CEO, Harman International. Mr. Dinesh Paliwal, based in New York, joined KKR in 2021 and is a partner within the firm's America's private equity business. He currently serves as KKR Lead Director for Marelli, as well as Executive Chairman of Marelli's board. Prior to joining KKR, Mr. Paliwal spent 35 years in the corporate world, living and working in 6 countries on 4 continents. Mr. Paliwal was chairman and CEO of Harman from 2007 to 2020, a global leader in connected car technologies, audio solutions, SaaS, including cyber cloud-based OTA and IoT solutions. Prior to Harman, he was with ABB for 22 years and served in dual roles simultaneously, being president of ABB Group in Switzerland and also chairman and CEO of ABB North America. Mr. Paliwal was also on Fortune magazine's Business Person of the Year list and was listed in Yahoo Finance's 5-star CEOs. Mr. Paliwal serves on the board of directors of Nestle, Raytheon Technologies, and on Miami University's board of trustees. He has served on the board of Bristol Myers Squibb, Tyco, Johnson Control, ADT Securities, Embark, CenturyLink, and ABB India. Mr. Paliwal received his master's degree in engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology and earned MSc in engineering and an MBA in finance, both from Miami University in Ohio. He also received an honorary Doctors of Laws degree from Miami University. We are privileged to have you with us, sir. Now, please allow me to say a few words about our DG, Dr. S. Sundar Manoharan, a renowned educationist, scientist, and an administrator who obtained his doctoral degree from the Indian Institute of Science in the year 1991, and after his postdoctoral fellowship served at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur as professor between 1996 to 2014, and as the Vice Chancellor of 3 universities between February 2014 till February 2020. He has over 30 years of extensive experience in teaching and research in the area of material science and nanotechnology. He was deputed from IIT Kanpur to be the founder director of UGC-funded 100 crore project to establish National Center for Nanoscience and Nanotechnology at the University of Mumbai premises in the year 2012 to 2014. He served as a visiting professor in internationally reputed institutions, including NUS Singapore, University of California, Berkeley, Max Planck University, Germany, Imperial College, London, and University of Maryland, USA. In the recent past, he has held several administrative positions, including being member of Project Advisory Committee at DST and DRDO funding agencies. For his immense contribution, he was also awarded Innovation Gold Medal by the Department of Science and Technology and Lockheed Martin, USA. He is a recipient of Global Indus Techno Innovators Award for his research contributions on nanomaterials and devices by Massachusetts Institute of Technology, USA, and has received Innovation Awards instituted by Intellectual Ventures, USA. Dr. Sundar Manoharan is known for his virtues as a mentor, teacher, leader, and an innovator. He is committed to serve the humanity by dedicating to the cause of science and technology research. He has ensured all-round development by adopting novel and innovative approaches. We have all experienced it, never compromising on quality. His endearing personality has been a tremendous source of inspiration to many young researchers and teachers at PDEU and across the globe. Thank you, sir, for joining the session and providing guidance and encouragement to all. I shall first invite DG Sir for his address, followed by the talk by Mr. Dinesh Paliwal. We will keep some time for question and answers. at the end. And now I will request DG sir to proceed. Over to you, DG sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Banerjee, for introducing our chief guest. And ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues, students, at the outset, let me warmly welcome each and every one of you to Pandit Deendayal Energy University. And especially this day is a very important day for us because we are observing the birth anniversary of Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay, who was born in the year 1916. Therefore, this is the 105th birth anniversary. And this is a day where we really reflect on the aspirations and the philosophy of Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay. Needless to say, this particular university has got the charter from our Prime Minister when this was willfully called as Pandit Deendayal Petroleum University when it since the inception. And since then, we have grown with the spirit and claims of his life. As Dr. Paliwal mentioned about integrated humanism, this is a day where the Antyodaya Divas is also observed across the country. And the idea is to make sure that the philosophy of taking everything that we experience in life to the least of the citizen or the poorest of the poor is the spirit of Antyodaya Divas. And to make sure that everything is extended to the least of the citizen is a very big mandate and a very big dream that Pandit Deendayal had, which means to him, the earth has to be flat. When we are mixed with so much of traditions and barriers and so much of technological limitations, where not the entire country and the entire citizen of this nation is able to enjoy things in common. This is one aspiration of not only our Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi, but also he advocated the vision of Pandit Deendayal in taking the entire technology benefits to the poor. And that is his heart's cry, and that's the mission of PDEU as well. And PDEU especially gets a gentle reminder because every time you pronounce the name of Pandit Deendayal, there is a small, reminder to you whether we live in the philosophy of this great philosopher, which means I need to connect with the society. I need to reach out to the least of the citizen. But there comes the challenge. And how do we do that? Already we have seen a big transformation going from PDPU to PDEU that happened in 2021. And this was again initiated by our Honorable Prime Minister. Now, having got this new name, then the name changing is easy, but we need to change as per the name. One, subscribe to Pandit Deendayal's claim about integrated humanism. The second thing is about energy for all. That's where we are caught up with a new slogan, transforming our students minimum as energy soldiers for the nation. So we have a special charter. Now, when we look at the challenges in the country at large, we feel that we are just a drop in the ocean. And we don't know where to start and where to end because it is so complex and it is so demanding. But I also understand that every drop makes a mighty ocean. And PDEU, as a concerted university, when we add a drop willfully and with a lot of diligence, I think we are part of a mighty ocean. So anything that goes from here, anything that goes from the corridor of PDU is supposed to be adding to a mighty ocean. Therefore, our efforts are not limited. We are not limited by the initiatives that are taken from PDU, but we also have to be constrained by the philosophy of reaching out to the least of the citizen in our country. In other words, my daily coming to the PDEU has to be transformational. It has to affect somebody's life. It has to affect my fellow colleagues. It has to affect my family. It has to affect the families nearby. So what is the stature that I carry? What is the heart that I carry when I go to the work front? And is my research going to really affect the society at all? So all these are intriguing questions which we can willfully ask this day, because this is supposed to be also observed as a Antyodaya Divas. So very good time for us to ponder and very good time to introspect. And we need to see whether we really touch lives. We need to see whether we are really transforming or whether we are disrupting the transformation. It's very easy for us to be a channel, and we got to be soul searching whether we are a channel or we are a stumbling block. So PDU has a greater challenge as an energy university. One way we can do that is bring energy for all, youth for tomorrow, and then carry it forward. You know, as a famous singer said, carry the candle unto the darkness. You know, we may not be a lighthouse, but I just have a candle, but I can really run to places of darkness and light many hearts. And that is a new charter for our university. And to this end, I want to gladly tell all the stakeholders that we are subscribing to the spirit of Pandit Deendayal in many ways. We have lit the nation with initiatives on solar photovoltaics, and that has brightened the scope. In fact, the Charankara project, which is one of the biggest PV solar plant in India, was born out of the initiative from PDU, and I'm very, very pleased with that. There are more initiatives, more path-breaking technologies which need to come, which needs to touch lives. And we have to underline the importance of frugal innovation, and we need to make sure that many more innovations come from the corridors of PDU, and that's the best return gift to the spirit of Antyodaya Divas, and also a true honor to the philosopher and humanist Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay. What else we can say? We are a chosen community. In other words, I think all those who are here in PDU, I could say that we are crorpatis or we are millionaires, because we are one in the 2.3 billion who are chosen to be carrying the charter, the philosophy of Pandit Deendayal from PDU. I'm so excited that we are in a place where we are reckoned with a greater philosophy to carry in our spirit, merely touching lives, merely touching the other person who is working with me. And that's all it's all about, the great humanist and philosopher. I'm sure we are going to do well. And this is, I often envy SPM, because they take the lead to conduct this lecture, great philosopher's birth and which lecture. But I have a feeling that this has to be a university lecture. And we also consider this as a university lecture, greatly led by SPM. They have the rare privilege. Now, to this year's celebration, we have got the best person to enlighten us and to be the chief guest for this memorial lecture, that is Professor Paliwal. I first had to do a due diligence to check whether they both are relatives, but he said no. But I'm sure he is serving the international community. He carries the spirit of our philosopher, Pandit Deendayal. Now, I'm very happy that he has joined. These are early hours for him on a Saturday. But what a great joy that across nations, across the globe, we can be, connected to carry on with the spirit of Pandit Deendayal this evening. And I very warmly welcome Professor Dinesh Paliwal to this memorial lecture. And I want to specially thank all the stakeholders who are part of this evening's function. Thank you so much. I want to thank Dr. Pramod Paliwal, Dr. Tanushree Banerjee, and our registrar, Professor Tarun Shaw, and all my fellow directors and faculty members who are present in today's function. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, sir, and also mentioning our connect with the philosophy of Pandit Deendayal ji. I shall now invite Mr. Dinesh Paliwal for his talk on leading through exponential times. Over to you, Mr. Paliwal.
Thank you so much. Where do I start from? I was taking notes as Professor Manoharan was talking. But before I say a couple of things about what I just picked up, what I learned, but thank you, Dr. Banerjee, for making this all happen and making this all work in the digital world we all live in. But Professor Manoharan, before I, thank everybody else to have me for this, which is quite an honor and privilege, and I'm very humble. But I must tell you, you echoed so many things which go back to when I was a young boy in a small town called Agra. My father moved from Jodhpur. He actually, 3 times he was in jail for India's freedom movement. And all I hear is stories from my mother that how it was. I was not even born back then. But a lot of connection goes back to Panditji. But anyway, what I heard from you, the philosophy of Panditji, you actually concentrated in few words, and I'll keep that and I'll give you credit next time I use. Adding knowledge and contribution from DDU to mighty ocean. That's the word. I think so well said. Time for introspection and to reflect. So well said. I wish everybody followed what you just said worldwide. That's what we need right now. Energy University, that is carry the candle to the darkness. That's exactly the vision, mission. You don't need the whole paragraph, but you just said it in few words. You mentioned doing the due diligence. We all believe in Vasudeva Kutumbakam, right? We are one large family, so we all connected anyhow. I never lost my connection to my dear motherland, India. And wherever I go, I carry that, all the teachings I learned as a child or even as a grown-up person. So with that said, let me not go any further, but I do want to say special thank you to Professor Paliwal. He was the anchor who actually made it happen. We've been friends on LinkedIn and we exchanged thoughts. And then when he reached out, I committed without knowing what my schedule would look like, but it all works when you want to make it work. So thank you. And then I should also take this opportunity to say, what an honor with this great intellectual group who some of the names, Professor Manoharan, you mentioned. But when I hear that is the intellectual power which will continue to drive India forward. I mean, some of the names, some of the associations, Professor Manoharan, you had with IntelliVentures, you may know Adrian Brown. I don't know whether you do. And of course, Lockheed Martin. The current chairman CEO is a very dear friend, Jim Teslet. And a great friend of India, by the way. He and I have traveled India and visited when we were part of the US-India Business Forum. With a lot of connection point, I would love to, later on, I'll ask Professor Paliwal to send me your contact so that we can communicate offline.
Sure.
With that said, the topic is very pertinent, but if I may just say a few thoughts on why today and what are we talking? I mean, we can pick any topic we like, but I believe we are in an age of acceleration or exponential times we are going through. And when I say age of acceleration, that's the borrowed phrase from, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Thomas Friedman, who wrote Word is Flat. I've gotten to know him. He has come to some of my events and shared some of the thoughts with my leadership team. And no doubt, a time of unprecedented change, notwithstanding the pandemic we've just been through and we're still going through. The exponential times are continuing with us. And exponential times calls for exponential leadership, which is what we were earlier talking. Our Prime Minister Modi in New York City, carrying the flag of India and talking the big vision and trying to lead in many ways. So ubiquitous connectivity of the world. Earlier we talked about your vision, Professor Manoharan, ownership to usership. We talked about Pandit Deendayalji's vision that he wanted it to be to everybody, not just a select few. And technology has a lot to do with it. You're embracing technology at your institute, at your university in so many ways. That's driven by data, 5G, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so many things. Quantum computing. A lot of people challenge whether quantum computing will ever happen, but when I listen to our dear friend Arvind Krishna, IBM, he's driving it. He thinks it's here. Applications will develop over time. Anyway, much of the acceleration driven by decades of globalization. I'm a firm believer. I'm a huge fan of the term globalization. A lot of people like former President Trump and others, they hated that word, but they don't understand what that means. So I'm a huge fan. Just to give a simple, statistics, which all of you in academics know that 28% of the world GDP is driven by globalization. That's $22 trillion. It's not a small amount. And that's literally the cross-border trade. And you cannot stop that. If you stop cross-border trade, the whole world comes to a standstill. So transforming how we live and how we work globally, but also profoundly impacting society is what the challenge we all face today. However, something else has happened along the way, which has been creating an economic imbalance. And particularly the last few years, we have felt even more economic imbalance. We'll hopefully get to talk a little bit about it. So it took a global health crisis to really remind us that how the economic balance has made some things worse and some things we obviously can work on. And that result is a lot of distress, a lot of political tension. We have seen the powers, the global powers, how they were kicking the ball during economic, the pandemic. The economic crisis was also made worse. And major nations, as we all fight through this whole thing, they have done more damage with political rhetoric than they have helped. But that's where the business, that's where the academic institutions come in to lead, as always. And I've always felt, no matter who the Prime President of the United States could be, there's a powerful corporate sector which always carries the ball forward. And I think that same can be said for India as another great democratic nation. So during these times, we call for cooperation, less confrontation. It is with a spirit of community that we will finally fully emerge from these frustrating times. That's my personal belief. So with that said, and I personally believe we are going through a very, incredible time of change here. We have once in a lifetime, or one can say that once in a century opportunity to reshape the future, especially the young society of India. What you're doing in your university and your institutions, you're reshaping the future of the country and the world with the talent you all are reshaping. So many industries, part of the problem, what we are dealing with, whether it's a global imbalance, many industries have suffered deep wounds, and these industries may never be the same. History shows that there is a great opportunity on the other side of the great pain once we get through that. Opportunity for business, industries, governments, and even some economies. Opportunities to reset, to reevaluate the processes, the procedures, or entire lines of business, how we do things. The ability of business and economies to adjust, adapt, and pivot gives me sheer confidence. The continued lingering of the COVID situation, together with lingering problem with semiconductor sector, access to supply chain, massive disruption right now we're going through, have put a damper on the economic recovery in the United States, India, China, everywhere else in between. So resilience, that's the word which comes to mind when I'm talking about India. India, not only the third highest in confidence level as per the latest World Economic Forum data. That's a tremendous leadership. The confidence brings action, in my opinion. That's what India has always done. So what will help lead the way forward, in my opinion, that's rapid acceleration of digital transformation. Again, India has led the world in that. Shareholder capitalism, not just corporate capitalism, shareholder capitalism. That means everybody benefits from the capitalism. Public-private partnership, that would be very crucial, not just in the sheer words, but in reality. Let's see. So, as the slide title says, that really, did we need a global health crisis to remind us the cracks in the foundation of economies, the business, the global business we all live with and work with, and the society has a lot of cracks? So we all know the pandemic abruptly not only reminds us that how interconnected the world is and the intricate nature of our supply chain and supply channels. A lot of people are questioning, should we be depending on a lot of semiconductor to Japan? China has already clearly announced that by 2025, they will have full interdependence. There are pros and cons to that, but hopefully we'll get into that into question. So in India, the reduced foreign investment as an outcome of this crisis we're just going through led to a significant market capitalization decline across all industries outside of pharma, biotech, and telecom, just some examples. And this health crisis provided visibility into how disproportionately vulnerable lower income individuals are in our society. And not just India, by the way, Brazil is another example, Africa, and in the United States also. Growth prospects, at least in developed countries, shrank from, in least developed countries like India and many other countries, shrank from 5%, was a forecast before, to negative 0.04%. Basically, we have no growth right now. The economic, I mean real growth, the economic impacts of COVID-19 has also been more detrimental than the virus itself. We all know that. And politicians have gone back and forth to open the economy or close economy. And there's no right and wrong answer. So that brings me to my perspective. I love the 4 C's. I mean, as you need to leave something so people can remember what are these 4 C's: the connection, community, collaboration, and communication. To me, these are the foundation of any business for recovery or to grow. So when we talk about these 4 C's, let me just talk about first the connection. The tech enablement scaled out of necessity, in my opinion. Otherwise, people will not be communicating if you go back to 2 or 3 decades. And there's no turning back to it. China was a closed society, but China is not totally connected and they cannot go back either. Analog institutions were forced to pivot into zoom into digital transformation. And I'll not, no pun intended, the zoom, but we are really zooming into digital transformation. And rapid acceleration in e-commerce, digital payment, which India is again leading, contactless, touchless technology, telemedicine, and many more. In India, 72% of the population is still operating primarily out of home. That means e-commerce and a lot of digital work is being done, and changed how consumer spend and how online spending increased. The company I just came from, Nestle, the board meeting, we saw our e-commerce doubled in the last 12 months. It has its pros and cons, and hopefully we'll get into that in next Q&A session. The second C stands for community. So short-term economics has stifled societal benefits, but not long-term. And hopefully you share my view. We cannot afford to leave some geographies and key constituencies behind, whether it's a government or business, where we must become social stewards by moving towards a system with built-in compensation. Built-in compensation, where we generate value, are we properly compensating those stakeholders? I know Professor Manoharan talked about stakeholders a number of times. It kind of echoes with me. Built-in compensation mechanism for those who are currently not benefiting as much. As an example, how much IT work is being done in many rural part of India and how much manufacturing is done in rural part of China. Are they truly getting benefit for what they create value and value, which Western worlds are totally benefiting from that? That's a question. Training and reskilling. Are we providing training and reskilling to bring stakeholder benefits across the global business? That's what is causing problems for the imbalance in globalization. So corporations, in my opinion, have the lead here. They must work with universities like Pandit Deendayal University and many others to identify skills most in demand in the corporate world. Whenever I'm talking to the various universities, I always said, look, never before the need for us on the same page. Universities and the corporate world have to be on the same page. We need to understand world is changing fast. We cannot be teaching what worked 2 decades or 3 decades ago. So we need to understand what is need of the business. Are we teaching that to our students so that when they leave the university, they are contributing from the day one? We used to say when I left Miami University in 1985 or IIT at Roorkee, I had to go through IJT, initial job training, 12 months to learn how to contribute. We don't have 12 months time. We need to be productive from the day one. So there's a lot of work needs to be done in corporate and academia. The next C is for collaboration. So as I said, coronavirus provided a unique opportunity and actually reshaped the way we think and rebuild together. So with international power dynamics constantly shifting, we know how the shift has happened from United States to China to India and more coming fast. We must maintain consistent communication between nations and regularly redefine international rules. International rules are what we always say, China must abide by international rules. There's a lot of discussion in the United Nations, whether they follow or not, we'll see. Newfound visibility into the weakness of our global network. We are currently at a regulatory tipping point. You cannot regulate everything. The responsible corporations and academia and the nation state, they have responsibility to bring some regulation, which is part of our DNA and culture. And we can create a more level playing field by doing so, by working together to rethink outdated policies. And that's where I believe India has done a lot, but we still have to shed a lot of outdated policies which were written probably 50, 60 years ago for a purpose. That purpose is gone long ago. So with that comes the point of trust and reputation. They go hand in hand. So building on many local actions, but trust and reputation go together. So we have to contribute beyond payroll and taxes, listen and respond to the social needs. I talked earlier, the people within the company and their communities. Companies are not sitting in a corporate headquarters. Companies are across the nations worldwide. Talk of any company, Lockheed Martin, talk of Raytheon, Nestle. We are in the farmland. That's our community. That's our company spread all over the place. So we need to make sure we are also distributing benefits. More reskilling and education for a changing workforce. Germany used to be always in discussion what a great job they've done in apprenticeship, reskilling workforce. Not everybody has to go to the great university like Pandit Deendayal University or IITs or what have you. We need a lot of skills in different levels to contribute. So that's what I'm talking about. In most of the world, infrastructure is still lacking, and public-private partnership is badly needed. So that brings me to the last fourth, the C, that's communication. I'm a huge fan of communication. Whenever communication falls apart, that's where the rumors, the distrust thrive. In a crisis, leaders have even bigger opportunity not to display the butterflies in their stomach, but to keep the resolve as Prime Minister Modi does. I mean, he's the man who's carrying a lot of uncertainty in his stomach, in his mind, but he never let it come out on his face. And that's called good leadership. Professor Manoharan talks about it earlier. So at a company level, confidence from employees around profit and demands are at an all-time high since the pandemic set in. And we need to make sure the stakeholder concerns are also brought in. That's the ESG. Hopefully we'll get in a second in that. So that brings me to other perspective that economies and businesses have changed forever. And I really believe that for good, actually. that things will not look back. The saying that good old times, but really not the best times. The good times are yet to come. I'm a firm believer in that from a business and economic standpoint. So let's talk about globalization. From my point of view, and I use this, I'm paraphrasing what Thomas Friedman has said many times, the globalization genie is out of the bottle. And it will take more than a global pandemic to undo a sophisticated global supply chain and the widespread benefits we have gained. Therefore, what I'm saying, we cannot put global genie into the bottle. It's out for good. There's no way. That means we have to live in a digitally connected global world. To reinvigorate and realign global trade, a lot of work needs to be done. Business and governments must collaborate even more tightly. And I know Prime Minister of India is reaching out to business houses. Same thing. Trump wasn't doing it. I hope Biden administration will do more, integrate business and politics together. The good politics is what is good for the societies, that is growing GDP. That's what we need. So we have as I said in my beginning, we have a once in a century opportunity to reshape the future of economies and business on a foundation of connection, that is through digital transformation, stakeholder capitalism, that is prioritizing the needs of all communities, not just the few, and collaboration of nations, governments, business, and society, and open, transparent communication. That's the fourth C. So if I move on, I'm going to shift the gear for a second because I don't want to make it too heavy because you all talk a lot of academic and a lot of business in universities. I wanted to shift gear a little bit. And if you don't mind, I'm going to shift towards, for a moment, I want to focus now on some fundamental elements of leadership. Many of you listening today are students, so I thought it will be appropriate. And I'm just about to embark on your journey into careers and your career and life decisions. So while it's good to talk about macroeconomic, the global imbalance and economies, I also want to give some practical input, my advice on the attitude and the qualities that I believe have played a big role in success I've had to date. So how did I get here? That's what I want to take you with me. So let's start at the beginning of my story, way before Harman, way before Indian Institute of Technology. I was born in Agra, India, in a family, very middle-class family. My father, as I said, he played a big role in India's movement, freedom movement. 7 siblings, and my parents said, look, we're not going to give you a lot of inheritance, but we'll give you the most precious. All 7 of us are masters of PhD. So I cannot be more thankful to the parents who had vision for education. And that's where I think number one message comes to all of us, that pay attention, education, education, education. I was greatly influenced by my father's teachings, and his key teachings were no tolerance for injustice and to live courageously. Courage is something which people say you're born with. I think courage can be taught. We all have deep down a lot of courage. We want to speak ourselves, but we hold ourselves. And you have to do some introspection. Why? If you believe in something, speak up. So then later on, after my bachelor's in science in Agra, I studied at IIT Roorkee, and then I went to Miami, Ohio. And I taught 4 years physics while I was earning my tuition, while got my master's in engineering and my master's in finance. And since then, I've worked, as Dr. Banerjee said earlier, in 6 countries. And I think that was the best thing happened. India, China, Singapore, Australia, Switzerland, and the United States. So much I learned from different societies. We all are same deep down. We may talk in different language. We may come from different point of views, but we all very deep down, we are same. So here's my winning formula. And as I said, everybody has their own winning formula. I call it learn, live, lead. So I said first 4 C's, and I'll say it's 3 L's. So these 3 words are simple, but wonderful if you really take them into your heart with the fullest definition of the words. So learning, the very first one, learning is my passion. I made few notes from Professor Manoharan, Dr. Manoharan's opening remarks, And by the time I'm done with Q&A, I hope I will learn a great deal from you. So if you take that to your heart, to the fullest definition of the words, learning becomes your passion. With each new door that opens in my life, it always represents an opportunity to grow in new and exciting ways. Education never stops when you leave the university. And in that context, learn to leave your comfort zone. That's a big deal for me. You know, if I was comfortable in my zone, I was in living in Columbus, Ohio, I would have never volunteered to go to China, a totally foreign land where Indians were not welcome in 1994. It was a gray China of Mao. I remind you all, it's not the China you visit today. So get out of your comfort zone if you really want to explore and learn. Living, take on all opportunities the life presents to you. Be open. Don't say, well, I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I would not succeed. That means you're closed. So be open. Now, Warren Buffett, the founder of Berkshire Hathaway, all of us know about. If you go actually on Google him, but actually you can also find 6 teachings from Warren Buffett on my LinkedIn. I actually put his teachings with a little perspective. One of his teaching was choose your partner well in personal life and in your professional collaboration. And all of us can relate to that. I've been very fortunate to have an incredible partner in my wife, a professionally trained musician in Hindustani classical music, double, triple masters, but incredible, thoughtful person. We've been married nearly 35 years now this December. And also choosing professional partners equally important. Who do you work with? Sadhu Sangat Kijiye. Whoever you are surrounding with, you become that. So who do you work with? Who do you partner with is very important. Very hard to teach our children sometimes because they themselves have to make that decision. And the last one is in living, I call it pursue your passion in order to find your purpose. And sometimes your passion may be lost. People say, well, my passion is to just listen music. Well, that's fine, but what's the end goal? Where's your journey going? And listen in stereo. Since I ran an audio company, JBL and Harman Kardon, I used to say, many of us listen in mono. Mono means we are only listening what we want to listen. Listening in stereo means 360. Also contrarian views. What people will tell you, if you're open, you may not like to hear sometimes because that's controversial. Sometimes you don't like to hear your own criticism, but we all have to listen in stereo. Then you're getting all the perspective. And in the end, you decide what you want to keep. And the last, the 3L is lead. Speak up and take action. We all have decisions to make. We all have to speak up for what we stand for. And that's important. Be the role model you seek of others. Don't simply say Professor Manoharan is the biggest role model, and he is. You can learn from him. How do you become role model for many young generations who start to follow you? You will inspire them. Build a community around you. Community doesn't mean the whole nation. Community could be wherever your people are. Do they get inspired by you, how you behave, what your character is? And give back what you can. Giving back starts, I remember when my son, when he was in middle school, and when he graduated in US, when you pass the 8th grade, you graduate. So there was a little party and he got some $370 in the gifts. And he gave 10% back to American Heart Association. For a young boy like that, I saw the character that he sees, my wife and I, that we always believe 1/3 of what we earn, we want to give back to society. So give back. And diversity of living experience, which will make you a leader. So surround yourself with diverse thought leaders, diverse people, diverse in experience. If you only surround with who you want to be surrounded, you will not learn. So as you begin your journey and prepare for ultimate road trip, I call it, road trip is not just your final year of engineering. You go visit all the factories and innovation centers. Road trip is when you left the institution and you're out of your comfort zone. Now you need to figure things out. That is called beginning of the new journey, the ultimate road trip. Remember to go from one mono speaker to hi-fi stereo listening. That's what will differentiate you from others. And with that, I hope my few words and remarks I provided you will give you some food for thought. Like I got some food for thought when Professor Manoharan was talking. And with that, Professor Paliwal and Professor Manoharan, I'm going to join you for any Q&A people may have.
Thank you, Dinesh ji. It was wonderful listening you. I was
just Dinesh.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Dinesh. Incidentally, morning only, I connected with Rupendra, and Rupendra said Dinesh is terrific, and that's what proved out to be. So, as Dr. Tanushri, we have the questions. They might be coming in the chat box. I have certain thoughts in mind. And Dinesh, I remember when you joined KKR and we had a quick chat, and you actually asked me my opinion about optimism in the coming year. That was great of somebody who joined a global investment firm, was also trying to check somebody who is into academia in a country like India. What are his views? So I was really overwhelmed with the kind of consultation you engage into. And I think that's something, one of the virtues of a leader. A leader doesn't works in isolation. Leader works in consultation. Maybe the consultation be remote for that matter. I also remember you were excited when I had joined the board of Tribal University in Rajasthan about 4 or 5 years back, and you were very excited, and you said that it would be a contribution to society. So as we have questions, I have a couple of things in mind, and I think can I ask you a couple of questions?
Please. Yeah.
Okay. You very rightly spelled out the aspirations of the current generation. We all are having to deal with millennials, and you have worked across companies, B2C context, B2B. When you were with ABB, you're largely into B2B context. B2C, you were with Herman, and I still remember the post that you used to share about how, as a CEO, you are dealing with the way the new generation customer is actually looking for products and services to have an exhilarating experience. So my question to you is that millennials, the interface comes at both places, customers as well as employees. What, in your opinion, are the CEOs of the day doing in order to cope up with the challenges thrown up by dealing with millennials?
That's a very thought-provoking question. You mentioned millennials, and then you said challenge. So you're right. Millennials bring challenge, but millennials also bring opportunity. Reminds me of Steve Jobs when he said, market research, when you do for the new product, is already too late, because he said market research will tell you what people are thinking. And Steve Jobs said, I want to think what people don't even know what they may want to have. And that's what he came out with iPod, the very first iPod. So I think the same mindset I try to bring in when I was running company, or now my portfolio company is involved, that millennials are not prepared to accept what we provide them. The good old saying that if you produce good product, like Henry Ford said, that if you produce good product, people will buy. That may be still true, but millennials, or even the Gen Z and many others, they're saying, no, you need to think about me, what I need. As an example, Nestle, world's largest nutrition and consumer product brand, but we are constantly listening what the small communities in Bangalore, in Delhi, in New York, and San Francisco is looking for. They are generally not so big fan of large brand like Cargill, Monsanto, Unilever, Nestle. To keep us relevant as a CEO of Nestle or Raytheon or Harman, we have to incorporate constantly what these people are aspiring. How do I incorporate that in my product? And to do that, what I used to do, I used to have small think tanks, and a small money you put aside, like Shark Tank, some of you watch on TV. And I said, you know what, twice a year, let's bring some very young, recently joined employees and ask them, what do you challenge in our company and what's your solution? Challenging is easy. You have to force people to think, so what would you do if you were in my shoe as a CEO? So you give them courage, you give them opportunity to speak. And the best idea out of 3 or 4 groups will say, we fund it with $1 million, fund it with whatever amount you can think of. But then you let them come up with a solution and you say, okay, it's a great idea. It has a market approach and people will love it. Let's implement that. So when you do that, then I'm answering another question. A lot of people ask me, can large companies innovate? Because only startups can innovate. I say, I disagree. Large companies can innovate, to incorporate your millennial question, if you bring in the entrepreneurial mindset in a large company, like Nestle does, like Harman did. We were innovating in nooks and corners of the countries, China, India. People used to think only US and Germany and UK can innovate. I say complete nonsense. 1/3 of the intellectual property in Harman came in the last 10 years, came from India and China. So if you start to incorporate the millennials mindset, their curious thinking and their innovative ideas, you will first of all always be relevant and you will become their hero. And then they don't want to leave. Otherwise, millennials have a problem. That's challenge they bring. They are not stable. They come join your company and very quickly they get bored with this. They want to go somewhere else. Why? Because they're not connecting with the way they think with the company policies are. So I think the challenge can be opportunity if we can embrace what they're looking for. And that's not an easy one, by the way, because millennials form the core, outside core, but you've got a lot of people with 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, 40 years experience, and they are incredible asset to the corporations, the universities, society. You cannot dump them. So you need to embrace millennials' viewpoint and all the wisdom and experience of the people, those who've been around long enough, and find a happy media, which is a challenge. I get it, but I think it can be solved if you're into it.
Wonderful, wonderful. We have Aditya Rai who has raised his hand. Can anybody please unmute Aditya and allow Aditya to ask his question?
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead, Aditya.
Good evening, sir. So as you were talking about how there is a need to integrate business and politics, but especially in a country like India, where politics is still a taboo subject and companies just need to just maintain the relation, nothing more. How do you think that such an issue can be tackled? Because this integration could prove to be very worthwhile for the economy and all its people at the same time.
So yeah, it's a great question, Aditya. Thank you. What I mean, public-private partnership, that's the old word we have all heard. I really believe more integration, more cohesive policy making should happen. That does not mean a particular company or sector will benefit because they are working with government closely. What I mean is business has certain needs. How we make ease of doing business, we always talk about in India. China has done it. India is embracing that in their own way. But also what our talent pool is and what we are able to do more. Some nations do certain things. Some companies do great things in their own environment, but they cannot do everything what other companies do. So that's where we need policy framework to assist and assimilate with the business, number one. Number two, for businesses to grow and thrive, they need to have access to talent pool. And talent pool doesn't necessarily come only for select few universities. So business have to grow. So therefore, we need to have reskilling. So education sector for government. Investment from the mayors, the governors, the chief ministers have to be going in that area. If you need more software, if you need more mechanical engineering, more energy education, where you have those sectors to thrive, you're not going to be hiring people from Kerala to serve the northern states, other way around. So I think that's second. Third, policy framework has to be inclusive. If you want to believe in global economy, make it level playing field. You have to have policies which treats everybody fairly. You do not want foreign companies to come, large MNCs to come and benefit from the domestic policy. At the same time, you don't want them to have disadvantage, but then they don't bring their capital, they don't bring their competence, they don't bring the leadership and intellectual property. So it's a holistic model. If we can keep the politics of the politics aside, you know what I mean? Politics of politics. Politics can be very powerful when you really say, let's have top 10 industrialists and bring them in the house and say, let's not talk about your companies. Let's talk about economy at large in India. That's what China is doing. I was member of the Business Advisory Council of Guangdong, which makes 40% of China's manufacturing. And the governor used to listen to all of us advisors, and he will take action. So that was a great example of how public partnership can bring a lot of fruit. And I think it can work if we can bring the good thought process behind it. And actually working in many countries, working in India also, more can be done.
That's
Thank you, sir.
Well, that's very contextual. Can somebody, Bakshil, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. My name is Dakshil Mehta. Sir, I have a question when we are talking about giving back to the community. Like we as a country are divided into urban and rural. How can we make something efforts for the wellness and health sector of the country? Like we have just passed a pandemic, so I believe that health and wellness would be the main priority. That is what Mr. Sanjay Mehta was telling in his interview with the media.
So again, a great question, and perhaps not an easy answer, but I'll provide you my thoughts. I'm a huge fan of what Azim Premji has done. I've known him for 35, 40 years almost, and I try to follow a little bit in our own family foundation. But he's actually going deep into the rural areas, education, healthcare. And same thing, I think, Kiran Mazumdar from Biocon, she was recently here, we had dinner together. And of course, we see that Tatas and Birlas traditionally have done that when I was a little child in India. And now the Ambani Group and Jindals and others are coming forward. But I think what needs to happen, if the same think tank of top 10 industrialists could say, listen, we all understand the investment has to go in healthcare and education in some of the major cities of Hyderabad and Gandhinagar and Chennai and Noida and what have you. But what about rural areas where we have very weak infrastructure? We just saw oxygen ventilators and concentrators were missing. A lot of work has been done recently by a lot of people, and some of the examples from Pandit Deendayal University. If they could create a little bit of startups there with the seed money, and invite people to come forward with some creative ideas. We call it in India jugaad, that come up with your own jugaad, which means 10% of the investment in a big city, they can find solution. And if we start funding, it's a small pocket change if you think about it. I think it will trigger a lot of innovation in the areas of all technology, but I would say wellness and health. We don't need to have the greatest ICUs and the greatest hospitals today. Eventually, we need to. Right now, we have nothing in many rural areas. So I think squarely, this responsibility falls not just on government, but also industries who are making tremendous money out of the country or out of the world. They need to start investing in communities where they're not getting anything. They might not be contributing a hell of a lot right now, but they can contribute a lot more to the economy. It's like in China, go west. East is completely saturated. So now people going all the way to the Uyghurs in the Western China, and they're starting to invest. And of course, there's a lot of humanitarian issues coming in, but how do you integrate them? By bringing your capital, by bringing your corporate initiatives and supporting the basic schools, elementary schools, then middle schools, without even worrying about their universities or not, because we need all kinds of skills from the pyramid, from the CEO down all the way. You need unskilled workforce for our factories. They do as critical job as the skilled engineers from your universities producing. So I think that's something public-private partnership can absolutely solve the wellness and health and also education crisis in India and rest of the world.
Yeah, very rightly said. And I would just add here that the startup mentality is actually contributing. You have information technology platforms available. So remote consultation and telemedicine, for that matter, are also things which are contributing toward this. And as we were discussing just before the start of the event, that the way the pace of vaccination is visible, I think there is a lot of optimism around even in healthcare sector also. We have Shreya Singh who would like to ask. Please unmute Shreya. Yeah, Shreya, please go ahead.
Yeah, am I audible, sir?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. It was a great session. What I wanted to ask is, you mentioned that we have a once in a century opportunity to reshape the future of our economies. Sir, but don't you think a situation like a pandemic kind of sets us back a bit? So do you think this can also be utilized as an opportunity?
Shreya, thank you for asking. I absolutely believe so. As we have all heard a million times, don't waste a crisis. Sometimes some companies create the crisis so that they can turn that into an opportunity. And I've always done that. Every time I had a corporate crisis, I've said this is an opportunity. We cannot go further bottom. Right now, world has really reached the bottom. So this is a crisis. We have learned we can do a lot of value-added work without going to the offices. We can do a lot of value-added education remotely, where incredible opportunity will come. And workforce, the gender inequality, a lot of our female workforce have to leave at some point in time because they have a natural cycle of life, and they need to add that to our society. And once they leave, they sometimes don't even come back. So this crisis has helped us. In the company I'm a lead director at Raytheon, 40% of our workforce is working from home, and we are not missing one beat. I think it's going to stay. So a lot of things crisis has shown us will change our mindset. Mindset was, if you're not in the office at 8 o'clock, you're not a good employee. That's not true. In India, typically we waste 1 hour in commuting one way and another hour commuting back, 2.5, 3 hours sometimes. That's a sheer waste of productivity. So if employers can accept that and believe, they trust these employees that they are loyal, they can work from home and they're not going to misuse the time, even if they get up 20 times to do something else, it's fine. As long as they're motivated to do, I think they will do fine. So I think this crisis, not just for healthcare point of view, from productivity point of view, is actually not bad. It will improve our environmental crisis by not having so many people commuting. It will improve our telecom. It will improve in investment. And I think it will add a lot more to our productivity. All of a sudden, we have a large workforce contributing to the GDP than before. So I really believe so. And also, last point, this crisis has also shown us how to solve problems, how India has solved the problem of pandemic, how Israel has solved problem of pandemic, and how we are communicating in this pandemic through Zoom. A lot of corporations did not allow Zoom calls. It was not counted as attendance. Now we are. Miami University, the state of Ohio doesn't allow. Now they're going to open it up. So I think we are learning a lot of things. That's called stereo thinking. We were thinking in a monolithic mono now, and now we are thinking all point of views. So yeah, Shreya, I believe this pandemic, if we treat it as a crisis and don't waste it, use it as an opportunity, I think we'll do a lot better with that.
Couldn't agree more, Dinesh, on this, and I'm sure you would agree with me here that Douglas McGregor, when in the 50s at MIT Sloan School of Management, postulated the theory X and theory Y, he would have never thought of this crisis which we all are facing. So basically, it's sort of redefining the relationship, trust between employers and the superiors, for that matter. And what you rightly said is that that has taken a positive turn. Wonderful. We have Ashutosh Agrawal. Can we take a couple of more questions, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Great. So maybe we can take a couple of questions before. Right. Ashutosh, please go ahead. Ashutosh Agrawal.
Hello, sir. I am Ashutosh Agrawal, and my question is, like, as you were talking about the exponential era, so what are the limitations for a person who is entering the corporate worlds? Like, if he is having a linear thinking process or linear thought process, sir. So how one should develop his mindset accordingly as per this exponential area?
So Ashutosh, this is actually something we all can be taught. And I'm a student of how do I stop thinking in linear or incremental, is a similar word, and into exponential. So classic case is, if you walk into somebody's office and they've got a pretty chaotic desk, got 7, 8 files, 7, 8 things happening same time, and you walk into another office, absolutely clean desk, one piece of paper. Both are productive, and I'm not going to tell who you should be. If you walk into my office, it will look pretty chaotic. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm inefficient. I have figured out how do I can juggle 6 or 7 balls at the same time. It actually keeps me on the toe. So I could be on telephone solving a crisis in Germany, and next one I'm speaking to somebody I'm mentoring. So immediately switching, and then back to someone comes to me with a human resources related issue. So if you can compartmentalize and say, you know what, just like in real world, everything goes on same time. You don't tell the world should stop to solve one problem at a time. No, we're solving all the problems same time. We are the microcosm of the world. So Ashutosh, you can train. If you're thinking like I used to, when I was a young child, I used to say, how can people listen music and still be solving mathematical problems? Well, they figured out. I learned that. Now you can play music here and I can still focus. You saw probably US Open tennis here. Novak Djokovic against Medvedev. Djokovic was strong favorite. Medvedev, they were booing him. They were booing against him. He completely filtered out because he was thinking in an exponential way. He said, all those things are happening. I can still perform on this one. Immediately he won, he could switch and he could talk to different things. So I think this is something we can train, from linear thinking to exponential thinking, linear problem solving to exponential problem solving. And also same thing, exponential times means we're not going to be moving into incremental small steps. Digital transformation allows us to take large steps at a time. Like, simple example, when I lived in China in 1994, they never had corded phone. I'll show you the example. That's the corded phone, right? I still have it on my desk because I have both. They go straight to mobile phone, and you talk to those generation, they say, what do you mean you used to have a corded phone? Because they've never seen it. That's called exponential change. That's what we expect more from the technology shift. And same thing you will see in energy. I know we are talking to Petroleum Institute, you're doing incredible research, but we are also looking, and you're also looking at hydrogen, gray hydrogen, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen. We're doing test runs with F-35, F-135, the Joint Strike Fighter plane, the most advanced fighter plane. We put our engines on them from my board. I'm on the board of Raytheon, and we're testing hydrogen energy. And we will solve that problem too. That would be solving. So that's called exponential thinking. That doesn't mean we'll move away tomorrow to traditional petrochemical, what have you. I think they'll coexist. So I think exponential thinking starts today, at this moment. When we finish talking, think about it, how you can start thinking simultaneously to solve many things.
Thank you, Dinesh. And before we have the concluding remarks, I take the last question from Dheeraj Kumar. Dheeraj, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So you said something about the concept of 4 Cs. So I would like to know that how the community across the world, like in India and across the borders, are aware about the concept of 4 Cs, and if they are much aware about, then how it can improve the economy of a country in the segment of green economy. Like, if I
Yeah. So Dheeraj, 4 Cs, they apply in our life too, in our relationship. You know, I always say, if you don't have communication, you cannot collaborate, right? If you don't communicate, you don't collaborate. Remember in school, when I remember my days in IIT, or at the time of Roorkee actually University, some students, they were genius and they will hold their solution. They will not even share with others. You don't collaborate if you don't. Best thing happens when you start teaching, when you tell somebody how to solve a problem, which you're all very good at. So communication solves collaboration problem. We collaborate much better. So I think when you talk about green or energy, or you talk about any problem solving, it's not just the green energy. We have to solve healthcare problem. Earlier, someone asked the question. So if we have to communicate, that means different media, social media, whatever platform you're using, Telephone is not the only media. We don't need to travel all the time. We can communicate. Professors, scientists today are solving problems. Look what happened in BioNTech in Germany with Pfizer. A lot of communication was happening over the cyber. And that's how they were solving. So scientific community, same thing. Your research community of your university is solving problems. You're looking at think tanks of US, Europe, and India and China and collaborating. That's how you solve the problem. That's how you look at what green energy can do. How does it supplement solar, wind, traditional oil and gas, and green energy? So communication, collaboration, community, connections, those four are critical in our family life. They're critical in society building and critical in research, critical in economy equally. And how you apply whichever C is important, those levers you pull in how you like.
Yeah, I just take this liberty, Dinesh, to allow Amruta to ask the last question actually. Amruta, please ask your quick question.
Yes, sir. My question to you is on a very lighter note, sir. How difficult was it for a young boy from Agra to make it to become EY's Entrepreneur of the Year? What was the journey like as an Indian and American cultures are really contrasting, and it is often noticed that it takes a lot of efforts on your part to get an early acceptance in the community.
Amrita, we can have a session on that, and I wouldn't mind if you want to separately communicate. We can talk. But I had quite a few of my struggles, and which I happily share worldwide. And my children actually laugh at me, my English. When I came here, I'll give you a few examples. When I came in, I said, "Oh, you also have Plymouth." That's the Plymouth. The pronunciation. Going into Kmart looking for something, I'm looking for eraser, right? But in India, we use rubber. So I'm looking for rubber, and everybody said, "Wait a minute, why is he asking? Oh God, why is he asking?" And they show me the aisle where they're selling rubber, and that's a very different thing. So a lot of those things culturally had to overcome at the same time. Learning immensely. And when came the Thanksgiving, I was invited. I was strict vegetarian, never had any meat in my life, no, not even eggs, never drank anything. And I shocked everybody because they said, "Who are you? What do you do? And you don't eat, you don't drink." And then they asked me another funny question, "Do you do this and that?" So all of that, partly humiliation, partly learning the new word for me. And I said, my courage inside was kind of suffocating for a while. And then you all have your own seminar series in university and institution. I used to have my seminars every Wednesday. I had sleepless nights, butterflies in my stomach, because I wanted to do well with professors. So now my children ask me, "Dad, you've done these million times, the speeches, you get on the stage, you talk lectures, impromptu, fireside." I say, "I know, but I always get butterflies. And I want those butterflies to come." That means I'm still conscious about, am I prepared? Am I up to the game? So I think, Amritya, the key is always bring your child in you, that I have a lot to learn. There's always a situation which will put me in discomfort. I'm not going to be in comfortable zone all the time. By the way, you know me now a little bit. When I'm going in a totally foreign setting, those who have never met me, they don't know me. And I don't need to tell them what my bio is. They may treat me looking at my face and my skin color and my size. Oh, here comes one of those Indians who has nothing to offer. That's okay. That's the setting. But now in next 5 minutes, I need to earn, not by telling who I am, by expressing my thought process, let them learn. So I think that's the key. When you leave your universities, go with a great confidence, because you have a lot to give to the world. You've learned, you are relevant with things which most of the people might not be. At the same time, be open to listen to their point of view and contribute without making them upset, because nobody wants to hear, "I'm all wrong, these youngsters coming in will solve all the problems." The solution is somewhere in the middle, listening to the wisdom, at the same time bringing your inputs. So push yourself out of your comfort zone, push yourself to collaborate, push yourself to communicate, push yourself to be transparent. It's okay. You can sometimes, making fun of yourself doesn't hurt. At the same time, spring out of that, spring back. So I think that's what I still do. As I said, not much had changed. And coming from Agra, nobody believes. In fact, people believe, oh, Dinesh, you're from India, you must be from Delhi. I say, what does that mean? People think only people from Delhi or Mumbai know how to speak. I say, I come from a little village called Agra, and I get little fun out of it. My wife and I are both from Agra, and we travel around and we have a lot of fun. So thank you for your question. You got me going on that.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the great strategy execution guru Ram Charan, who incidentally also comes from Agra. So we have luminaries who come from Agra, and very happy to have this very, very vibrant session. Dinesh, yesterday we were talking and you said interaction is where the fun is. And I think it was really, really great experience. Over to you, Dr. Tanushri, toward the last leg of the session.
Yes, completely agree, Professor Pramod Paliwal. It has been a very interesting session, followed by the interactive session, first with Professor Pramod Paliwal, and then the way, sir, you took the questions from the students. In fact, initially we saw only one hand or two hands coming up, and then your enthusiasm was so motivating that they came up with all varied kinds of questions. So it was, I think, a very nice interactive session. So on behalf of PDEU, I thank you, Mr. Dinesh Paliwal, for sparing your time to be with us for the Memorial Lecture Series. In spite of what happened yesterday, the challenge that nature threw yesterday, still you could make it with us. So we are very thankful. Certain interesting points of discussion as I was making my notes from what you said. I'll just recap very quickly. First, exponential times need exponential leadership, where data and technology are important drivers. That was very interesting. Economic imbalance, one must look for cooperation and reshape the future. Within that, you talked about resilience, then you talked about PPP, public-private partnership. You especially emphasized on rapid acceleration in the digital world, where you talked about linear versus exponential jumps, changing nature of the supply chain. We have experienced that in India, especially with the online markets. Brick and mortar companies also have very quickly changed their methodology in terms of catering to their customers. Even in academia, we have seen the digital method of teaching being adopted by all faculty members, and then we have been able to continue with the same quality of education. Then you spoke about the 4 C's. 4 C's: connection, community, collaboration, and communication. And there you talked at length about the value for stakeholders. And you especially mentioned good times are yet to come. We all are believer in that, and we will continue to believe in that. Winning formula from an industry leader is what you mentioned with the 3 L's: learn, live, and lead. And get ready for the ultimate road trip was your advice to the students as they graduate from the university. With that, once again, I thank you for being with us for this session. I also thank DG Sir and SPM Director for their address. Thank you to everyone who have joined this session. I'm sure we all have some new piece of knowledge and information to take back with us today. I also thank all officials and staff who have worked hard to make this session operationally successful. With that, we shall now conclude the session for today. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. We'll catch offline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
All the best. Be well. Thank you.